Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. We have a lot of news this evening, so let's get started. First up, for first time, Joe Biden calls for President Trump to be impeached. Democrat presidential hopeful delivers remarks here in New Hampshire. Let's take a listen to that video.
Do you need a new roof but think you can't afford it? Our average customer pays $7,500 for a total roof replacement, and we have finance plans with payment options under $150 per month. Call today. Century Roofing, we've got you covered.
And we have been consistent on our vigilance to keep foreign nations out of our elections. That was until President Donald Trump. Last week, on the White House lawn, President Trump invited China to get engaged in deciding our election and who our nominee would be. He did it while standing in front of reporters and cameras like I am this moment in the broad light of day. It was a third foreign power that we know of that he's asked in clear, unmistakable language to interfere on behalf of the democratic proceedings in the United States of America. Interfere with them. Quote, Russia, if you're listening. Or, quote, I'd like you to do us a favor, though. End of quote, to the president of Ukraine. Quote, China should start an investigation. End of quote. It's wrong. It's the very thing Washington warned about. It undermines our electoral process. It's un-American. Go into any city or town in this nation or your state. Go into any schoolhouse. Go into any town hall, any VFW post, any football or baseball game, and ask the question, is it okay for a foreign nation to meddle in our elections? To spread lies about opponents? Specifically, at the direct invitation of a sitting president? The answer is obviously no. As Americans, it offends every bone in our body. The ballot box is sacred ground in America. That's where we make our voices heard. That's where we decide who leads us. That's where we chart America's future. It's where we fulfill our duty as citizens. It's not complicated. It's called democracy. We believe Americans should decide American elections, period. But Donald Trump will do anything to get reelected, including violating the most basic forms of democracy. It's stunning, and it's dangerous, because it directly threatens our democracy. This is not hyperbole. It's a fact. No president in American history has ever dared to engage in such unimaginable behavior. With his words and his actions, President Trump has indicted himself by obstructing justice, refusing to comply with the congressional inquiry. He's already convicted himself. In full view of the world and the American people, Donald Trump has violated his oath of office, betrayed this nation, and committed impeachable acts. You know,
Okay, and there you go on that video. Triple E detected in mosquitoes in Portsmouth and Fremont, officials say. Risk level raised too high in Fremont. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
There'll be hogs and goats and geese and sheep and all the chowder you can eat in a big parade with floats and marching bands.
Batches of mosquitoes in Portsmouth and Fremont have tested positive for Triple E. Fremont's risk level has now been increased to high. There have been no human cases of Triple E in New Hampshire, but earlier this year, a horse tested positive for the virus in Northwood.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Vandals hit Ringe Police Department cruisers with paintballs, officials say. Police say officers responded to reports of tires on fire in opposite end of town before vandalism. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
For 10 years, New England homeowners have trusted Century Roofing. We get the job done right at a fair price. Call today to arrange a free estimate and to reserve a spot for your 2019 roof replacement. Century Roofing, we've got you covered.
This morning, we're getting a look at the damage left behind by vandals at the Ringe Police Department. The chief says some sort of mischief happens every year around Halloween. This time, calls came in late Saturday that tires were on fire in two opposite ends of town. While officers responded, the vandals hit the buildings and cruisers with paintballs.
That takes away from time that we could be out, actively patrolling or answering calls for service. It just detracts from what we could and should be doing.
If caught, the vandals would face misdemeanor criminal mischief charges and would have to pay to repair the damage.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Manchester police learn strategies to help people with dementia. Officers often call to help find people who wander away, police say. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Ray Brewer.
When family and friends come together on a beautiful day, what better place to be than in your own backyard?
We have 25,000 people living in New Hampshire with Alzheimer's disease.
So Manchester police officers are learning how to deal with people suffering from the disease.
We do have quite a few senior citizens right here within the city limits, and often we get a lot of calls for missing people that have Alzheimer's or dementia.
The most serious problem, people suffering from the disease who wander away. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 6 out of 10 people with memory loss will wander and sometimes hide from those trying to find them.
They usually won't respond to their name being called. They're often frightened, and so they won't respond to first responders and their efforts to find them.
But Grenier says the good news is they usually don't wander far.
If they're looking within about a mile radius of where they were last seen, that's often where we find them.
For officers, though, once the person is found, there are often other difficulties.
And the problem is that when they contact these people, there's that lack of communication. They're not able to, the people are not able to understand the officers.
And Grenier says in those situations, it's not so important what the officer says as how they say it.
Be calm and reassuring, and that long after the person remembers what they say, they'll remember how the officer made them feel.
The Alzheimer's Association says they also want to work with patients' families so they can keep those dire circumstances like wandering from happening in the first place. Reporting live in Manchester, Ray Brewer, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Very good tips there. And now let's take a look at the U.S. stock market and see how your U.S. stock market closed for this Wednesday evening. And here's a look at that U.S. stock market for all of you for this Wednesday evening. Your Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in the green and went up. Your Nasdaq closed in the green and went up. S&P 500 closed in the green and went up. Gold closed flat. Oil closed flat. U.S. 10-year closed flat. Euro/USD closed in the green and went up. And VIX closed in the red and went down. Stocks rise for the first time in 3 days as traders hope for U.S.-China trade progress. Stocks rose for the first time in 3 days on Wednesday as traders hoped for some kind of deal to come from U.S.-China trade talk beginning on Thursday, even if it's a limited pact. Matt Lauer accused of rape by former producer. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Those new allegations against Matt Lauer. Variety reporting on an excerpt from Ronan Farrow's new book, Catch and Kill, which details an on-the-record accusation of rape against Lauer from a producer who worked with him at the Sochi Olympics in 2014. Eva Pilgrim is here with the story. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, George. That producer coming forward in Farrow's new book with detailed claims of how the alleged assault happened while she was traveling on assignment. Ronan Farrow's new book, Catch and Kill, which details his investigation into Harvey Weinstein, as well as his attempts to get his then-employer, NBC News, to broadcast the story. Now, new allegations surfacing about former Today Show anchor Matt Lauer, who was fired from NBC in 2017 for alleged sexual misconduct. According to Variety, which obtained excerpts from the book, a former NBC News producer who worked with Meredith Vieira has come forward identifying herself in Farrow's book and stating that Lauer sexually assaulted her at the 2014 Sochi Olympics. According to the woman's account in Catch and Kill, Lauer joined her and Vieira for drinks, and she ended up going back to Lauer's room twice. Once to retrieve her press credential and another because he invited her back to the room. Once in the hotel room, the woman says Lauer, who was wearing a T-shirt and boxers, pushed her against the door and kissed her, then pushed her onto the bed. According to the Variety excerpts from the book, she said she was in the midst of telling him no when he just did it. It hurt so bad. I remember thinking, is this normal? The woman telling Farrow it was non-consensual in the sense that I was too drunk to consent. It was non-consensual in that I said multiple times that I didn't want to. Back in New York City, according to the excerpts, the woman told Farrow she went on to have further sexual encounters with Lauer that were consensual. After the encounter, according to Catch and Kill, Farrow says she told colleagues and superiors at NBC, but nothing happened until she went to Meredith Vieira and told her what happened. Vieira urged her to go to NBC Human Resources with a lawyer. Matt Lauer responded to these allegations this morning, saying the story is filled with false details intended only to create the impression this was an abusive encounter. Nothing could be further from the truth. There was absolutely nothing aggressive about that encounter. This encounter, which she now falsely claims was an assault, was the beginning of our affair. NBC released a statement about the excerpts from Catch and Kill saying, Matt Lauer's conduct was appalling, horrific, and reprehensible. That's why he was fired within 24 hours of us first learning of the complaint. And the book also presents Farrow's account of his investigation into Harvey Weinstein and his efforts to get that story on the air at NBC. Eventually, he had to take the story to a magazine to get it published. George.
Okay, thanks, Eva. Ronan Farrow is going to be here live Friday morning for an exclusive interview.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Turkey begins offensive aimed at Kurdish fighters in Syria. Turkey launched airstrikes and fired artillery aimed at crushing Kurdish fighters in northern Syria on Wednesday after U.S. troops pulled back from the area, paving the way for an assault on forces that have long been allied with the United States. And that does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another newscast. And I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Good night and bye, everyone.